Action. Welcome to the Reshape Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Jason Atkinson, and my guest today is Michael Fine, Ancestral and Primal Health Coach. Michael is all about food, movement, and mindset. Formerly suffering from autoimmune, IBS, anxiety, and more, now 5+ years medication free. You can find out more at ancestrallyhealed.com, where Michael invites you to reconnect with your ancestral roots and heal your body. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on. And besides everything you listed, I also suffered from depression and insomnia.
Okay. And no longer the case, right?
No longer the case.
That is
And
awesome.
it was a hell of a journey because from the moment it started, it was just a medication packed on between different antidepressants, anti-anxieties, and a biologic. Which, if no one knows what that is, that's a injection that you take 4 times a year that suppresses your immune system, and the insurance companies love it because it's a $15,000 shot. So I was a $60,000 a year patient before including any other medication I was taking. So they loved me.
I'm sure they did. You and I connected on a show. We were both guests on the Carnivore Community Worldwide on Instagram, and I urge everyone listening to go check them out as well. Instantly connected. The rapport there, part of that is due to the fact that we've both been unwilling participants in this sick care model of what we have in this country. Yeah, my audience knows my story. I know some of your people are going to be listening. I want to recap shortly, and then we really want to dive into what happened with you and how you got into this whole ancestral lifestyle. But at my heaviest, I weighed 254 pounds. I was clinically obese. I had been obese the majority of my life up until that point. I found out I had high blood pressure. I was pre-diabetic, and my doctor's office recommended that I lose some weight to help resolve the symptoms, either that or go on some medication. That was the alternative. However, they did not have a plan for me to do that. And so I discovered pretty quickly that the system is not really set up to help anyone get healthy. So that's when I set out on a journey to figure it out for myself, along the way to losing 75 pounds of body fat, maintaining that for more than 10 years, and helping dozens, if not hundreds of people over a career span to get similar results. You and I connected because you ended up going a little bit different direction than I did. You alluded to just a little bit there. The medications were actually part of your treatment plan, right? So can you give us like the full story on exactly what went down?
Absolutely. And first of all, I just want to say kudos to your doctor because a lot of doctors wouldn't even tell you to lose weight. They would just immediately put you on Crestor or some other medication, which,
Right.
gets you right into that rut. But ultimately, what ended up happening is if you look at my family history, or like they say, familial predispositions, I'd be a perfect patient for being on meds my entire life. I mean, between the different autoimmune diseases that run in my family, my brother had, ulcerative colitis, my aunt has Crohn's, my grandmother, God bless her soul, had different cancers, and she also had lupus. And that doesn't involve every other issue that was going on. So looking at me, I was basically set up by the way that the mainstream narrative looks to be on medication for my entire life. And there were different circumstances that took place during my life that kind of started unlocking keys a little bit to make me question, be like, wait, that doesn't seem right. And it kind of started for me when I was going through college. Obviously, I grew up in the 90s. So back then, the food pyramid was a real thing. Don't eat butter, eat margarine. I can't believe it's not butter. But the old saying was Chuck Norris could believe it's not butter, which if you guys remember that joke, it was hilarious. And my father, was very heavy. And he had some issues with alcohol. And for that reason, having high blood pressure and high cholesterol, we did not eat that much meat. And when we did, smothered with seed oil ridden barbecue sauces, all these issues. So everything was working against me. And finally, I went to college and I started having issues that, stemmed from anxiety, depression. And the first medication that I was on was called Vibrd, which was an SSRI, which is a nasty, nasty thing. And if anybody's on that, you should really look into seeing how you can get off of it. And I've learned that if you heal your gut and you give your brain what it needs, I'm a true believer that the gut microbiome definitely sends chemicals to your brain that distorts everything because our brains are very chemical. So one of the side effects I had from that was, if you ever watch those doctor shows when somebody's having a heart attack and they say charge the paddles and you hear the Well, that's what I was feeling in my brain when I was going to sleep. And the next day I call my doctor. I'm like, I had a really rough night, all these issues. And my doctor's first response is, oh, that's not a side effect.
Mhm.
I was like, okay. And I would then Google, well, what's the side effects of this medication? And that was literally one of the first side effects that a lot of people reported. So
Mhm.
that was the first time where I was like, you know what? Like, that's very off.
Mhm.
And I ended up switching from that to another antidepressant, which I was then put on Lexapro after that, which I was on for, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years. Um, and then shortly after that, I started having some sleep issues. I started having IBS, which if anybody out there deals with that, I'm sorry, because it's terrible. It's like you have that urgency and you'll run to the bathroom thinking you're not going to make it. And then when you sit down, there's like nothing coming out, and
Yeah.
it's completely debilitating and you're trapped, and
Yeah.
it's terrible. Um, so after going through 10 years of basically dealing with all of that, I then, of course, well, I also was going through autoimmune issues, which in my case was psoriasis.
Mhm.
And once I saw my dad, and my dad also has it. So once I started to see that pop up, immediately I was getting concerned. Well, what else might I get? Because I mean, my brother started having signs of ulcerative colitis when he was 14 years old. Imagine
Mhm.
that. He doesn't have his colon anymore, which I kind of wish I would have known all this then, because I think we could have potentially reversed it. But fortunately, he's living a very happy and healthy life, so that's not the worst situation. Um, and um, and then so I got put on Stelara, which is that medication I was telling you about. It's an injection 4 times a year. And what that would do is suppress my immune system. And it was so frustrating because if someone coughed or sneezed near me, it's like I got sick.
Yeah.
And if and it was so debilitating, because imagine trying to go to work and you're constantly sick. And it gets to the point where where my employer wouldn't even believe that I'm sick, because it's like, how can you be sick all the time? So between being sick all the time, running to the bathroom constantly, it's like, how do you live life? So it got to a point where I finally was, my son was born. This was, 2021, and I didn't know any better. And at that point, I was still going through what the mainstream narrative is, at 4 months old, give him baby oats, in the grains and all of that,
Oh yeah, we're
which
going to get
now,
into that.
oh, we absolutely will.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
I know
That's where it
way, way,
starts.
way better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned
And
you're a new. You mentioned you're a new father within
y-
the past few years. Is
Yeah,
that right?
I have 2 children. I have a,
Yeah.
a son who's now 4, and my daughter just turned 2. She was born
Mhm.
on the summer solstice, and I'm telling you,
Oh
she's
wow.
just she's a ball of light. I
We
mean,
are attempting to go Instagram live. I see you sent a request to be. I sent you a request. You sent me a request. I'm touching go live, and it's not doing anything.
okay,
So we may not be able to do a live simulcast as we had anticipated. But to the people who are watching the video, you're welcome to go ahead and stay tuned here. You're
let me
going to
back
get
out and try one more
audio from
time.
both of us. I don't know if you can hear. Obviously, you can't see the video with Michael here.
Yes.
I apologize for the interruption. Several things you said there, Michael, that I want to, yeah, see, sent a request to be in my video, view, go live, and then nothing's happening. So,
Okay, it's
yeah,
it's it's the Insta gods. They just know what we're
it's
talking
it's
about.
something. But anyway, people check
uh,
out the full interview is going to be on the podcast and the YouTube channel. I believe Michael will probably be sharing some links to that as well. If you're part of his audience, go over there and follow him on Instagram as well. And you're welcome to listen into the audio and then get the video component of it later. If you can hear, wave or give me a sign if you can actually hear Michael. That would be great. And if not, we'll end this broadcast and just do the Zoom. So a few things you said there I wanted to get into more detail about, but
okay.
let me just start with the childhood. Okay,
Yes.
this is where as soon as a baby is weaned, they're shifted this grain-based diet. Okay, I
Hmm.
was a young parent. My oldest child was born. I was 23 years old. We were young parents. We didn't really know much about nutrition. We were just basically kids ourselves, and didn't have a whole lot of money at the time, and the pediatrician has coupons for Gerber baby food, and they're telling you to get on Infamil and all this garbage, basically what it is. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's not a natural diet for a human being, especially a young child that's in these formative years. But that's where this sugar addiction, dare I call it an addiction, or glucose dependency, we'll say, that's
Hmm.
where it gets started in
It,
infancy. And
it
so we're
does.
never really aware of how we got misprogrammed, how our metabolic damage began,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how pervasive it is. Another thing that's catching my attention, you got the tree in the background behind you there, and
Yes.
something you said about that medication, and you required additional medications to treat the symptoms or the side effects.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the profit model that's built into that whole sick care system. What I look at is the roots and branches. So I'm a functional practitioner. You are as well. You're looking at resolving root issues and not just treating or masking the symptoms and enabling someone to continue in the poor lifestyle behaviors that are causing these symptoms in the first place. So we don't want to just trim the tree and make the branches look nice and pretty, but neglect the roots, right? I know
Absolutely.
you're on the same page with me as far as all that goes. So you had all these terrible health problems, and then somehow you got introduced to a different way of living. What were the major components of your lifestyle overhaul that really helped you to resolve those symptoms?
So interestingly enough, after my son was born, I basically got off social media because
Mhm.
I was working with a previous job, and I didn't realize there was this whole carnivore community, all these different things. And I want to say about a month or two before my daughter was born, my wife was having a lot of different issues, and we met this acupuncturist here in Fort Lauderdale at Soul Acupuncture, and we worked with Eduardo and Meg, and I guess they left a really good impact on her because she said, listen, I kind of told Eduardo what was going on with you, and I think you should go see him. So I went and I saw him and I told him about, my family history and all these different things. And he said, we could get rid of all of that. I go, how? He says, you got to eat meat. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, I have to eat meat my entire life. I was, told like you could have like red meat here and there, but,
Mhm.
and he goes, eat meat. I'm like, well, what kind of meat? And he's like, if it has a heartbeat, if it moves, whatever it is, just eat it. And I was like, oh well, did you just give me the green light to eat as much steak as I'd like? And he's like, yeah. So interesting enough, in Florida, they have a very big protection for different professionals here. So if you're not a licensed dietitian, a licensed nutritionist, you cannot prescribe a diet, but you can give information to somebody to help them kind of like figure it out on their own. And that's kind of where I am as well, practicing in Florida. I don't tell people I'm going to treat you. What I tell people is I'm going to teach you what foods truly support you, what foods don't support you. And you're going to see as you eliminate the foods that don't support you, the side effect is all those issues that you've been battling, they start to go away. And
Right.
if they don't 100% go away, they go away to a point to where you are so happy with life that you're completely happy. And obviously there's different situations. Like I work with somebody who's gout, and he has oxalate dumping that's been going for some period of time now, and it's a process. But as long as you keep the course and you have the right mindset and you trust with what you're doing,
Right.
everything else falls into place.
Right.
So when I first started, I mean, I was eating like Texas Wagyu, thinking like that's the type of meat. And what I've learned is as you go towards food that man has really created to try to maximize profit, whether it be boost fat, all these different things, health issues start to arise. And that's got me thinking. So as I'm now 6 months in, and I went to my doctor, I got my blood test, and my doctor's like, Michael, you're 31 years old, you're a really nice guy, your cholesterol is extremely high, you're going to die of a heart attack. Like, you need to take baby aspirin 2 times a day. And I was like, taking baby aspirin times a day? In my mind, I'm like, that's going to destroy my stomach. That's probably going to damage my endothelium. Like, if anything, that's actually going to kill me, not what I'm doing. So I told my wife, and of course, when you tell your loved one and you just had a baby, you have your second child,
Mhm.
you're thinking, I want to be here for as long as possible for them, for my family, for my future generations, because like that's what life's all about.
Mhm.
So I started doing research and I started listening to different doctors, and it got to the point where for 2 years I did not listen to music. Every time I got in the car, I was listening to doctors have different conversations to make sure what I was doing was truly healthy. Because when you have that voice in the back of your head that's saying, you could die from what you're doing,
Mhm.
it's extremely anxiety driven. And if your mindset is worrying about that,
Mhm.
just stressing yourself in your mind is enough to cause systemic inflammation. I mean, there was a study showing that if you eat while you're watching TV, your glucose will go higher than it would have normally.
Mhm.
Or what's really cool is all those people that are doing those continuous glucose monitors.
Mhm.
If you're worried about your glucose, ironically, your glucose naturally goes up. So it's like
Right.
there is a complete mind factor of what your brain is predicting and creating with where your mindset is.
I agree.
So that's when I realized that you need to have proper nutrition. You need to have functional movement, because if you don't move, you waste away. It's like a
Right.
business. If you're not
Right.
growing, you're dying. And
Right.
it's the same thing. People who are 50, 60, 70 years old, the reason why they're having issues moving is because they stopped when they were 30 or they stopped when they were 20. They were just sitting
Right.
down at a desk job.
Hmm.
And I just started realizing that all the different societal problems that we're having, it's all man-made.
Hmm.
And as we fit into that narrative and we're sitting there and we're following the guidelines, we are putting ourselves in such a bad situation. And going with what you said about babies and how like we're young and we didn't know any better,
Right.
it kills me that when you go and look at formulas on the shelves, it's
Hmm.
written with canola oil, soybean oil, all these different oils. And the reason for why all that is there is because when they started looking at breast milk to try and create formula in the 80s,
Hmm.
at that point there was seed oils that was beginning to come into the society because it was a
Hmm.
cheap byproduct. And when they tested the milk, they found that it was in the milk, not because it's what should actually be there, but it's because the body doesn't know what to do with it. It gets stored in your fat. And what is breast milk made from? It's
Right.
made from your fat.
Hmm.
So from that point forward, every baby that is being given formula is being put in a situation where now they're destined for metabolic dysfunction. They're destined for having all these childhood diseases that if you look at the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, they didn't exist. And now it's like 1 in 3 kids is pre-diabetic. I
Right.
mean, it's an epidemic and it's completely man-made
Yes.
and it breaks my heart. It
Yes.
absolutely breaks my heart.
Well, a couple things you said there. I want to go into more detail. It's a lifestyle. It's not just a diet. It's not just a workout. Those are components, but community connection, sun exposure, some type of meditative practice. There's a lot of different components to an overall wellness program. You and I connected. I mentioned earlier through the carnivore community.
Yes.
Carnivore is one type of ancestrally appropriate type diet, we'll call
Correct.
it.
Yes.
It's basically an elimination diet. So that
Mm-hmm.
means we're going to eliminate things from the diet.
Mm-hmm.
Carnivore is what I would call the most extreme elimination. If you were going to eliminate practically everything from your diet down to just the one essential thing, that would be your red meat, that bullseye I told you about right in the middle of the target. I know you like that
Yes.
analogy or that word picture. Not everyone needs to go to that level of restriction to improve. If you're just trying to lose weight or you're trying to get healthier or you're trying to reverse some symptoms or whatever you're trying to do, if you begin by reducing or eliminating grains, seed oils, sugar, like you said, the common
And
thread is man-made
and
industrial
legumes.
process.
Throw the legumes in there.
Legumes, of course, yeah, things like that. Right, that's not a natural food either. Okay, so I'm getting to notice we got 10 minutes left to go, so it sounds like we're just barely getting started. But let me close that out. We may have to do a two-parter here. So, how did we get in this mess in the first place? I wrote in my book, The 14-Day Carnivore Challenge, day one, if there's a ground zero for the obesity epidemic, it would be the dietary guidelines for Americans. This
Mm-hmm.
came out in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer do we use the pyramid as the representation. They shifted to the my plate a few years ago, but it's still the same recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 60% carbohydrate. It's a grain-based diet. Features very heavily the things that we were talking about, those industrial seed oils and so forth. It was sold as a healthy diet because it's low fat, and low fat is healthy. Well, there never was a shred of evidence to suggest that a grain based diet is optimal for human health. Nor is
Absolutely.
there any evidence that saturated fat is directly harmful for our health or dietary cholesterol for that matter. Those are the things that were vilified and the things that were made to be the savior, if you will. The grains, the heart healthy whole grains, those vegetable oils. I have to say
Mm-hmm.
vegetables in air quotes because those are not vegetables. Soybean, canola, corn
They're,
oil, those things can't exist without industrial machinery. They have to be extracted with high heat and chemical solvents, and they wreak havoc on the body. So those are
yes.
things we want to avoid, not prioritize. I shared my little slogan with you earlier. I've been using this for a few years now. We need to eat meat, not wheat. Okay. Not
Absolutely.
everyone needs to go to an all meat diet, but a carnivore in nature is any animal that includes meat in its diet. So whether it eats other things or not, that's considered carnivore. So, prioritize is what I'm saying. Those are the nutrient dense foods, and the things that we've been told are great and super healthy are the things we need to do less of. Just
Yes.
basically the exact opposite of what we've always been led to believe.
And I'd like to add in there is
Yeah.
a villain. And the true villain to all of this is Ansel Keys. And
Oh, I know.
I wish we can go back and see who paid him to do that study. Because there
Okay.
was a greater correlation in his study to sitting down and watching television than there was to actually consuming saturated fats with heart disease. And that's what sold everything. And you have to remember, this is around the time when processed food was finally figured out how to be packaged and sold. I mean, cereals, all these different things.
Right.
So they had to create a way to get people to buy it. And the best way you could do that is demonize what people always ate.
That's
And
right.
and 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 to go a step further, if you look at World War II, I mean, at that point, Americans were eating a lot of meat, and the issue is we weren't able to get enough meat to the frontline soldiers. So what did we do? We convinced Americans to grow victory gardens, so they were eating more vegetables. It became a higher component of their diet, and at the same time, what happened? The soldiers got the true nutrient density that allowed them to perform. They sacrificed American health for their soldiers, which makes sense. But the problem is it never bounced back, and the data was never given to Americans on how to actually live healthy. And you could see the data points: obesity, diabetes, heart disease. It just continued to skyrocket. And what blows my mind is if cardiologists and all these doctors were right, why is it as we've been following their guidelines, the line just getting steeper and going up higher? It doesn't make sense.
Right. That's right.
So fortunately, there's enough of us now that have realized and are like, you know what, I'm going to go out on a leap and I'm going to start thinking of the way that we always ate, because that's what heals us. And it all started with agriculture. I mean, wheat. The moment humans started to come together, look at the Bronze Age. I mean, our median age was 18, and it was because we were consuming diets that was loaded with anti-nutrients, so your body wasn't able to process vitamin D correctly. If you're not able to process vitamin D, I mean, that is the beginning of everything. I mentioned to you on that podcast, vitamin D, if you're creating it optimally, that unlocks the P52 gene. That is the spell checker gene. So every time your cells divide, that gene makes sure that it is replicating and dividing perfectly. That is anti-cancer. So how can the sun that they're telling us to fear, that is causing cancer, but in reality, it's unlocking genes that are anti-cancer? It just doesn't make sense. And go along with sunscreens from the 70s. I mean, it was supposed to protect you. Why has skin cancer been going up? And the data just came out that the people that are inside more than outside, they have a higher percentage of getting melanoma than people who are outside working all day. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just amazing how flipped the script is. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it's because they want us sick. If we're sick, they're prescribing us, and the same companies that are prescribing us own the junk food companies, and they're just making money on both sides. I mean, look at any business. If you see business practices doing that in a normal level that's not so high up, I mean, immediately they'd be called out. It's unethical. Mm-hmm. But these people are lobbying to politicians. They're ingrained within our governments, and they're the ones that are paying for their political careers. And it's screwing us all over. I mean, it's so sad.
Yeah, it's corruption at the highest level, and mm-hmm. It's finally coming to light. And like you said, there's too many people now who know the truth, and they can't stop us all. So that's why aligning on common purpose like this is great. We're not medical doctors. This is not medical advice. We're not telling anyone ignore your doctor. We're just saying do your homework, do your research. If you don't know about Ansel Keys and the 7-country study, if you don't know how all of this got started in the first place, you're not going to know that's a way out of it. Okay. Now, you mentioned agricultural revolution. Mm-hmm. It's not necessary to go back to the Paleolithic era, to really get headed in the right direction. We can take a trip back in time 50 years or 100 years. People did not have chronic metabolic disease. The population was not obese. And that's about the time we started figuring out how to process all these foods. Mm-hmm. The ultra processed foods are the root of the problem.
Absolutely.
If most people would just limit or eliminate as much as possible ultra processed foods, do about 30 to 60 minutes a day of some type of movement practice. Hopefully that includes some type of strength training component, some type of cardiovascular component, get outdoors more, maybe a few targeted supplements if you need it. If your diet is right, you don't really need supplements, but knowing what I know about working with people, I offer that as a backup plan. If you're not able to, hit all these nutritional goals, at least you can kind of, fall back on that. But we don't want that to become a mirror reflection of the pharmaceutical industry, which is, like I said, masking symptoms, enabling poor lifestyle behaviors. The herbs and vitamins and supplements are a tool to get to the root of the matter.
Mhm.
and then you should not need it indefinitely. You mentioned earlier medications you were on for 5 years or more.
A decade.
Most of those are intended to be for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And that's when I found myself obese, high blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. I looked ahead 20 years and I said, I don't want to be on a ton of meds. I don't want to be a burden to my family or have possibly early death or all these complications. I better make some changes now so that that does not become my future. And I thought I was going to end up working with people that were in that stage of life, like where you're talking about. But
Mhm.
what I ended up with was the people who didn't make those changes. And now we have to resolve these things that have been building up for 10, 15, 20 years.
Mhm.
It's more difficult, but you can still dig through all those layers. If you really get, like I said, to the root, if you're looking for root causes, it's there. It's pretty apparent. Diet is a huge one. The movement piece is huge. Those are the main two that you seem to be most focused on.
Yeah, the movements everybody should be doing is push-ups, dips, pull-ups, and squats and
Yeah.
planks.
Okay.
Everything else is just additional. You focus on those five, the primal movements, and
Okay.
you're set. It's to a point where, I mean, when I was in my 20s, I was taking everything I could to try and get as big as I could, as strong as I could.
Right.
I mean, since I've been eating meat, I mean, yesterday I was doing dips with 100 pounds attached to me. I mean, it's just amazing how your body recovers and how it's strong it could get when you give it what it's supposed to be. And I know there's a difference between men and women because we have different functions. And even though we can all do the same things, we do react differently to stress and cortisol and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But when you work out fasted, your testosterone is increasing. Your HGH as a man is going up 2000%. And then when they say, oh, well, you just worked out, that's your opportunity to have your carb window because it's all going straight to your muscles. The moment you do that, insulin is a master hormone and it is taking the same exact receptors as that HGH. And now you've just stopped yourself from being able to get the gains that you naturally would be able to get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you're touching on something important there. People are afraid to fast. They're afraid to eat a low carb ketogenic diet. They're afraid to eat too much protein.
Mm-hmm.
All of it's hard to peel the layers off, to pull the blinds off someone's eyes, because it's these ideas we didn't come up with on our own. We were told what to believe. And when you start telling someone, hey, grains are not super healthy and the sun's not going to hurt you, and you can fast 20 hours and not lose muscle or damage your hormones or all
They
this
just
other stuff
they
that
look at
you've
you
been
like
led,
you're a
it
conspiracy theorist.
challenges their entire worldview, because wait a minute, everything I've ever heard is a lie. I mean, some people can't accept that. It's not for everyone, but for the people who are willing to wake up and take some action